Lately, I have been thinking about project trees. I don't quite like this term, but I haven't thought of a good replacement for it just yet. Project trees are the trees that we visit again and again. These are the less than perfect trees that we always talk about. These trees have been severely damaged. They are veteran trees. They have high disease pressure. They're less than perfect, right? And rather than recommend the client hire us to kill it, we instead ask them to let us learn with it. And I know that sounds poetic and perhaps a little performative, but I mean it. And I think that you need to get some project trees of your own. Ultimately, project trees have made me a lot better at thinking about and working with trees. I started working on trees a long time ago, and I grew up with trees. I started tinkering with my own trees, growing some, really just watching and reading about them. And then eventually, at some point in my natural maturing as an arborist, I had to start making some plans and implementing them. And clients want that. They're looking for someone who will try to save their tree when others won't. I've learned that people will gladly offer you their trees if they believe that you care and you're being honest about what's possible. If you can set expectations properly, if you can describe how you'll measure if your plan is working or not. And don't forget, the client wants you to succeed. They're hiring you because you both share the same desired outcome. I've always pitched myself as someone who just thinks really hard about trees. Whether clients read that as me being humble or as me doubting myself, it doesn't really matter because the outcome is the same. And that is that I get to try and sometimes succeed with trees that have been written off. And this isn't just like blind tinkering. This is deliberate practice. And the more you work with trees, the more you discover just how many variables and nuances there are to your local tree species. And you're not going to find that in a textbook. You're not going to find that on Instagram watching GoPro footage of people killing trees all the time. You can't shortcut this. You have to practice. You'll learn how to actually identify when a tree is in fact too far gone. And you'll be able to identify when a tree is close to that line and when it's not. And chances are most of us can't actually tell. A good perspective is what's needed first. A genuine belief in the common sales dogma surrounding tree work can severely limit or even prevent you from developing like a good nature-focused approach. And this industry will teach you how to work on trees, but not necessarily how trees work, The North Star for most tree companies is just big tree killing stuff. And if you go to any tree trade show, you'll see what I mean. And I really don't like the term tree expert. This is sort of why I refer to myself as just someone who thinks really hard about trees. And that around here, it's a phony label. They want trees to die. There's no way of saying it in a different way. That's how they make their money. And most of the tree expert guys with tree expert on the side of their truck are experts at tree killing. And I actually felt so strongly about this that I wrote an entire article about it. Now I'll link it below. They've got big saws and big chippers and a business model built on making trees disappear. And some people think that's all tree work is. And perhaps they don't know that there is a ton to learn about tree stability or about tree biology or about the roles trees play ecologically. And all of it is really interesting and intricate stuff. But some people just think that caring about trees is just learning how to cut and climb and rig. Imagine you take your beloved dog to the vet. And the vet says, you have to put your dog down. Horrible news. And you get a second opinion and you hear the same thing. Then You get a third opinion. This time, they acknowledge, hey, this might not look great. However, we can try something. Here is a plan. Here's some tests that we can run to better determine what's actually going on. Here's what we can do if it's this. Here's another path if it's that. They have a plan. Who do you choose? If you're going to do whatever you can for your dog, it's obvious that you choose the person who's willing to try. And it's just like that with trees. Imagine you're a second or a third opinion. And other arborists or tree guys have looked at this tree, and within 2 seconds, they say it's got to go. Now, who do you actually believe? If you're the only one with the plan, and if the client actually wants to keep the tree, they're going to go with you. You're the only one willing to try. And like I said earlier, that's exactly what they want. They aren't expecting perfection. They aren't expecting you to hit the bullseye every time. They're expecting effort. And this doesn't mean saying yes to everything or experimenting recklessly. It just means leaning into what you know and what you don't know, and being willing to work at that edge. It means articulating the expectations concisely. And I will admit, being able to do that requires you to know a thing or two about trees. And to really care for them, you need a more zoomed out perspective. You need to know that caring for trees isn't just cutting and rigging. You need to know that trees have natural ebbs and flows in their lifespans. I made a whole article about that too. You need to know that decline doesn't always mean death. And sometimes they rebound with or without our intervention. Sometimes they don't. But sometimes they just need a little nudge to reach equilibrium again. Sometimes, even if you do everything right, trees are still going to die. You can never guarantee a tree's survival. And you need to set that expectation with the client from the start. And again, you need to be able to articulate the things you're looking for that will indicate if your plan is working or not. That's what makes project trees so valuable. You start projecting thoughts. You start thinking about this tree's future. Here's what I want to see. If we see this, we may have to change course a little bit. They bring attention to your work in a way that perhaps you haven't had before, in a more zoomed out way. They bring science into your work, and it becomes dynamic, and your approach iterates over and over as you keep trying and succeeding and failing. It becomes deeply localized, and you eventually actually improve the spaces in your community. You discover what works and what doesn't, and only through practice can you do that. Project trees force you to confront what you don't know. And I find that when I have a puzzle in front of me, the learning experience is much more fulfilling. I remember so much more when I'm actually hands-on. The more you practice, the more you learn about what is actually possible with trees. And this is sort of like a frontier that a lot of arborists don't bother to explore. I think ultimately, like, that's the point I'm trying to make. This is how you get better at being an arborist. And as more of you figure out the true mission arborists are supposed to serve, you're going to be really surprised at the clientele who are already there waiting for you. And they're going to ask you, where have you been? People are getting keyed in on the significance of finding a good arborist. And if we're good at being arborists, we have a positive environmental impact. And that's going to matter way sooner than we think.